If we could get started, if everybody could get settled in their seats. I'm Bob Blumenfield. I am the vice chair of this committee. I'm filling in for Marquise Harris Dawson. With me today we have Councilmember Lee, and Councilmember Cedillo is here in the back. And so let's get started. We have a number of items. I'm going to start. We have one multiple speaker item. So we'll take that up first. Mr. Corey Schmidt, if you could come forward, you'll have 2 minutes on multiple items, and then you can have 1 minute for general public comment. So go ahead. We start his time.
Okay. All right. Corey Schmidt for the record. Let's talk about some of these projects we got going on. Okay, so number 10 is this item on Purdue. So this is another development where just doesn't really matter about the neighbors. Didn't really care. Speaking on my own behalf, it's going to be a 5-story property. It's not really any 5-story. This actually would be the first one on the block. And there's been multiple outcries from the neighbors, and hasn't been willing to work at all with the size of the structure at all, or any of the mitigations. Kind of just was like, whatever. So another one is transforming churches into apartments, and then another duplex into a triplex, which is still 3 stories. So to me, that's not a triplex, that's a townhome. Another sneaky, hidden way of getting things done. So it leads me to talk about these electric fences. I agree. We should get some electric fences on these developers and just get things under control, because it's like we keep building all this stuff and it's half empty, and we're just waiting for that big payday at the end of the road, and that big payday is going to kick all of us out because it's just going to keep gentrifying. So let's talk about the zone change for number 4, which is basically where Taco Miendo used to be. They got kicked out because the rent's now too high. Again, goes back to building all these monstrosities and jacking up the price of rent. These, businesses can't sustain it, and it's all because the landholders are kind of greedy. So let's talk about number 11, the affordable housing regulations west of downtown. I totally agree with that. And number 5, church classroom in Paul's district, yes. And then for general
you can have
public,
1 minute for public comment. General public comment items that might come before the committee.
Yeah, for sure. So number 3, in regards to New Temple as historic. So I'm usually a big proponent of historic stuff. So I kind of wanted to know more from the person proposing it, because I looked at it on Google Maps, and I didn't see anything extremely special about the area, but I'm wondering, there might be some cultural significance, so I'd be interested in hearing what that's like. Because for me, it's a no right now, just because it looks like a parking lot, So that's everything I got.
Great, thank you very much. Now we'll take, we've got general public comment. Sarah Blanche for 1 minute. And this is on items that are not before the committee today, but that may be within the committee's jurisdiction. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Blanche. I am co-chair of the Los Angeles Drug and Alcohol Policy Alliance. I'm here today with an urgent request that Plum agendize Council Item Number 17-0117, the Alcohol Restricted Use Subdistrict Ordinance. This is a reasonable and flexible density of alcohol businesses tool. It's intended to focus on areas that are already saturated or sensitive use areas like schools and parks. We've been working on this. Councilmember Ryu introduced it in 2016. We've been working on this for 3 years. It's going to expire at the end of January. We urgently request that it gets agendized for discussion. Very important note, we are not asking, the ask here is not to sign this into law. It is a simple request for further consideration from the Planning Committee about its legality. So we have other community members to speak about it as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Elba Aguilar, followed by Lauren Natoli.
Good evening. My name is Elba Aguilar from the World Las Memorias Project. I'm speaking as member of the Los Angeles Drug and Alcohol Policy Alliance. We are an alliance of public health and prevention providers working throughout the city of Los Angeles to improve alcohol policy and reduce alcohol-related harms. This motion has been gaining support throughout the city. Eurozones can potentially protect sensitive use areas like schools, recovery centers, youth centers, and churches. It can prevent an increase in alcohol density and reduce high crime and high violence areas. This is a way to be proactive and designate places throughout the city to be protected from the new alcohol outlets, especially in the areas with economic hardships. I'm here to request you agendize the Euros motion, giving the city the ability to provide a feasibility report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lauren Natali, followed by Miriam Castro.
Good afternoon. I'm Lauren Natoli from AIDS Healthcare Foundation. As you discuss the use of land in Los Angeles, please do not forget our city's massive wound that is our homelessness crisis. Developers may come here claiming this minimal environmental impact or that future tourist destination, but what LA needs the most is housing for our most vulnerable populations. We need to get people off the street and out of danger. We cannot truly mold the shape of our great city without these minimal provisions, so we can't move forward when we've already fallen so far behind. It is vital that we preserve our communities by supporting progressive, sustainable land use projects that maintain neighborhood integrity and do not displace our fellow Angelenos. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have was that Mayra Jimenez, followed by Miriam Castro.
Good afternoon, Plum Committee members. My name is Mayra Jimenez. I'm here with Alcohol Justice, also a Highland Park resident. I'm also here to bring concern to Council File 170117, the alcohol restricted use subdistricts, and we really are here to ask that you agendize this item. We've been working on it since 2016 to have a discussion. This item being agendized is really just an ask for the planning department to assess the legalities of designating zones throughout the city where communities can designate sensitive uses like schools and churches where there is already oversaturation of alcohol outlets to be considered by the community. So it's a community planning tool, and we really hope that you all will consider agendizing this. It's very important. It's set to expire soon, and we look forward to being in touch with each of your offices to discuss further. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, we have Miriam Castro.
Excuse me, I need the translation, please.
We have someone who can translate. And if you could give her two minutes so that 1 minute is for the translation and 1 minute is for the speech. Go ahead. Por favor.
Good evening. My name is Miriam Castro.
Good afternoon. My name is Miriam Castro.
Estoy aquí como comunidad.
I'm here as a member of the community.
Por favor, para que tomen en cuenta la propuesta por lo que impacta a la comunidad. Gracias.
Please take into account the words that we say here because we are here in benefit of the community. Please listen to what we say and what we ask for. Thank you.
Okay. Last, we have 1 minute. Mr. Wayne from Encino.
Thank you, and shalom to our good councilman, Mr. Lee, a Sephardic Jew of the best kind. Now, we're here today to talk about land use shit. And we're going to get a lot done today because the bloodsucker's not here. The chairman bloodsucker is busy hiding from the Amoeba Center, and he's fighting for his very political life as I speak, because Marquisi Harris Dildo Dawson Jr., a.k.a.
Hold this time for one
he
moment.
gonna be
Hold this time. Hold this time.
wider.
Mr. Spindler, you can talk about items before this committee. You cannot make ad hominem attacks on people that needs to be related to what's going on before our committee. You know the rules. This is your last warning. You may finish.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, when I'm talking about the land use committee, the current chair is following the rules. The other people don't. So let's do this. Thank you, Gilcedillos, making a motion, make Blah Blumenfield the permanent chair of Plum. Second, John Lee, yes. Any opposition? No, it is so ordered.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, I'd like to take items number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 11 on consent. Just to confirm, we have no public comment on those items, correct? On what I'm confirming that on those particular items, we do not have public comment on the items that I just mentioned. We have comments on 11? Okay, then I will not take that one on consent. So the ones that will go on consent are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, but not number 11 because there is a comment card on item 11. Seeing no objection, I'm sorry. I did not call item 10. Please no yelling out from the audience. Again, I'm only taking on consent the items that I just mentioned, which do not have public comment cards on them. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and that's it. Okay. So, that being, seeing no objection, on the other items, we will have public comment. Seeing no objection, that is the order. So that takes us then to item number 1, Director of Planning's oral status report. Vince, is there anything?
Just a real brief report, Chair Blumenfield and members of the Planning Land Use Management Committee. Vince Bertoni, Director of Planning, just announced that if you haven't seen, we have actually a new website in the Planning Department, and we use it as a real, it's a much more functional portal than we had in the past. We basically took 20 websites, that we had 20 various different websites we created into one. And if you, I suggest that people get a chance to go on. It's planning.lacity.org. And it's a much more seamless experience for everyone, for all of our users and for all of our customers to get online and to really see what's happening in the planning department in terms of being able to follow what we're doing in terms of community plans, ordinances, development projects. It's a much more user-friendly experience for our customers. That's the first stage of then being able to go through and have a much more consolidated social media presence. And the whole goal is to be more transparent with the public and to have a much easier way to kind of navigate through our system. That is just a quick update. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to. Thank you. It's planning.lacity.org, or you can get it through what we use for all of our social media, which is Planning4LA, which is planning the number 4LA.org. Either way gets you to the site. So the old site, planning.lacity.org, gets you there, as well as what we use for all of our social media, which is planning the number 4LA.org.
And is it linked through MyLA 311?
MyLA 311. I haven't tried through MyLA 311. We could
So
double check. I don't have any of my folks here on this one.
I urge you. I make this push with every department.
Let me see.
I'd like us to get to a place where we have. I know different departments have different. This is a great site that you have, but we want our public to be able to go into MyLA 311 and to be able to, even if it's a link, to be able to get to every one of our departments' great sites.
Oh, yeah, we can pull that up real quick just to make sure.
Yeah, so
Believe. If not, we'll make sure we have a connection to it.
great. So just to work that in the future, because that would be great. Okay, the next item, Mr. Mejia, I believe is item 7. Is that correct?
Yes, Councilman. Item 7 is a report from the Planning Department relative to the Warner Center specific plan and the 5-year status report.
Great. Before you get started, I just want to say about this item, this is something that's very important to me and my district. The Warner Center plan has had a tremendous impact. It's done more than any other specific plan in terms of creating needed housing. It really has helped spur that. It came together collaboratively through 8+ years of community work, mostly that happened before I was elected to office. I had the privilege of taking the Warner Center plan over the finish line, but it had been negotiated for years before. And when we did take it over the finish line, it did not have any opposition, any formal opposition. The neighborhood council, the homeowner association, they were all for it. The goal of the plan is to create a live, work, and play area. The plan has done a lot to increase housing. More can be done to attract new businesses through this area and to make sure that it remains as a job center. This report helps both me and the planning department know how well the plan is being implemented, as well as what's working and what's not. No plan is perfect. We're going to continue to tinker with this as time moves forward. But by providing these specific periodic reviews, we can ensure the plan works well for the community and the business as well. So we look forward to your comments, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Tim Fargo, and I'm a city planner with the Department of City Planning. In accordance with the Warner Center 2035 plan, every 5 years, the Department of City Planning shall prepare a report on the status of development in the plan area. This first 5-year status report covers the period from December 25th, 2013, the effective date of the plan, to December 25th, 2018, and includes summaries of Warner Center 2035 plan projects, cumulative floor area, cumulative dwelling units, public input, mobility fees collected, transportation improvements, parking spaces, cultural amenities, and development agreements approved during that time frame. In the interest of time, I'll provide a brief summary of a few of these elements. More information can be found in the council file and in the handouts provided. The baseline development condition from 2008 in the adopted Warner Center 2035 Plan EIR was 6,200 residential units, 9.1 million square feet of residential floor area, and 16.1 million square feet of non-residential floor area. From 2008 to 2018, 4,593 net residential units, 5.3 million square feet of net residential floor area, and 35,000 square feet of net non-residential floor area were approved. So the cumulative approved development in the Warner Center specific plan area stands at 10,793 residential units, 14.4 million square feet of residential floor area, and 16.1 million square feet of non-residential floor area as of December 25th, 2018. These numbers are 41 to 54% of the allowed development under the plan maximum, and 78% to 85% of the development permitted prior to the requirement of the first transportation restudy. Projects submitted to the city but not yet approved as of December 25th, 2018 included 6,094 net residential units, 6.9 million square feet of net residential floor area, and 2.4 million square feet of net non-residential floor area. Since December 25th, 2018, 582 net residential units and 553,000 square feet of net residential floor area have been approved. Two of the recent policy initiatives for the Warner Center 2035 plan have been the mobility fee amendment and the proposed affordable housing amendment. The department conducted outreach to the public in accordance with the status report and received 246 written comments from at least 231 unique individuals or organizations. The primary concerns expressed included labor issues, infrastructure, transportation, housing affordability, implementation, and enforcement. At its meeting on March 28th, 2019, the Los Angeles Citywide Planning Commission took the following actions in accordance with the status report review. They approved the Warner Center 2035 Plan 5-year status report for the period between December 25th, 2013 and December 25th, 2018, pursuant to Section 10.4.2 of the specific plan, and they recommended to the City Council the following actions necessary to ensure that the city's implementation of the plan complies with its requirements and stated intents. Direct the Department of City Planning to continue interdepartmental coordination efforts with the Department of Cultural Affairs and other city departments. That Council District 3 appoint members of the Warner Center Cultural Amenities Committee pursuant to Warner Center Specific Plan Section 9.5. Support measures to require or incentivize affordable housing in the Warner Center Specific Plan area. And number 4, explore the possibility of an incentive-based approach to encourage local hire, prevailing wage, and other labor standards similar to the Measure JJJ Transit-Oriented Communities Program. Thank you. This concludes the presentation. We are now available for any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, and I certainly also appreciate the recommendations, and I'll be formalizing those as we move forward. Just a couple of quick questions. One, just to note, as you know, I was disappointed that we didn't do a public meeting in the Warner Center, because I think something that's this big deserves that. But it is what it is at the moment, but I just put that out there. Second, how many comments or letters did the department receive on this item?
Yes, we received 246 written comments from at least 231 unique individuals or organizations.
Okay. Did the planning staff itself identify any outstanding issues with the plan or its implementation?
This is Michelle Levy, Senior Planner in the Valley Project Planning Division. So we have approved about 30 projects thus far, and this is still a relatively new specific plan as far as specific plan ordinances go. About half of those projects have been constructed or are in the process of construction, so we don't have a large sample size to draw from. But as far as the procedures and process goes, we're continually looking for process improvements, but major changes to the specific plan language itself would require legislative updates.
Okay. And does the plan require any review of its transportation impacts?
Yes, so the plan includes, for clarification of your question, are you asking about plan-wide impacts, or are you asking about project-specific impacts?
Well, I know there's specific impacts, but I'm saying, I also know that the plan does require review of its transportation impacts. I'm raising that because I want to put it on the record, because it's one of the issues that people constantly bring up to me, which is, well, what about the traffic? How's it impacting? So I want to get it out there in terms of what the requirements are in terms of the transportation impacts, when that process is going to start, what type of public input, output will occur with that study. And I know you're going to do a restudy. Is that going to take into consideration things like vehicle miles traveled, as the state's requiring us to do that? How is that going to affect transportation projects? Maybe I should have told you that I know something's already happening, but and these are my follow-ups. But that's what I want to put out there on the record, because this is something people ask about all the time.
Yes, sure. So there is built into the specific plan transportation restudies that occur at 1/3 intervals. So using these numbers to track, again, the residential units, residential square footage, and non-residential square footage, once we reach a 1/3 impact level, that triggers the first transportation restudy. And so I did the numbers as of today in terms of what's been approved, and we're at about 77 to 89% of the way to the first transportation restudy. It's always a little bit difficult to know exactly when that would be triggered, but what I could tell you is that there's about 1,400 units remaining. So if there's 1,400 more residential units approved, that would trigger the first transportation restudy. We would certainly expect that would be the case within 6 months or so, if not a year.
And I'd just like to add one thing, and that is that when the specific plan was adopted, an EIR was adopted with the specific plan, which analyzed a maximum build-out. And so projects are utilizing the EIR. It was a specific plan-wide EIR, which studied more globally transportation impacts, and projects are using the analysis of the EIR and tearing off of it.
And to some of your other questions, so yes, the transportation restudy would take into account vehicle miles traveled. As far as the effect on current projects, so there would be no impact on current projects that are under review, so long as they're entitled prior to July of next year. And there may be individual projects that require additional analysis depending on whether we expect that they'll receive approval within that time frame or not.
And this is Blake Lamb with planning. So we're currently in conversations also with DOT and other departments involved in the transportation issue regarding the vehicle miles traveled, and we will continue to work with them to ensure that the appropriate analysis is done as part of the transportation restudy.
Great. Thank you. Colleagues, any other comments or questions on this? Seeing none, I'm going to direct the department to do the following, and it's pretty much going along with what you guys were recommending, which is direct the DCP and DCA to continue efforts to effectuate the Cultural Amenities Committee and requirements. Second, to direct the DCP to prioritize local hire and labor standards when development agreements are being drafted for future projects and report back on potential incentives to further these standards within the plan beyond the development agreements. And third, to direct the DCP to report back on the various recommendations and fixes as outlined by the Woodland Hills Homeowners Organization and whether any should be pursued through administrative or legislative means. I'm sure you received their letter, and they had a whole number of questions. This report should consider feedback from the business community as part of the report. So it's to get report backs on these critical issues. With that being said, we will, I guess, note and file this and have the directions as noted. Great. Seeing no objection, that'll be the order. That takes us to item, hold up here. Item 9.
Item 9, Councilman, this is an appeal by Jim Childs and Laura Mayers. It's an appeal, it's a CEQA appeal relative to the adaptive reuse of a church and the construction of a 7-unit apartment building.
Great. If we could have staff come present. We do have a number of public comment cards on this item as well, which we will hear after the staff presentation. Go ahead. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Michaela Torresgill with the Department of City Planning's Office of Historic Resources. Before you is an appeal of the Class 31 categorical exemption for a project involving the adaptive reuse of an existing church structure as a 9,256 square foot 7-unit apartment building. The subject property is a contributor to the North University Park specific plan, which requires that projects be reviewed under the provisions of the HPOZ ordinance. Because there are no design review guidelines for this specific plan, any project proposed on a contributing structure within the plan area is reviewed against the Secretariat of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. Staff's responses to the appeal are detailed in the staff report submitted to the council file on September 11th, 2019. Though most all of the appellant's claims were addressed in the project's original letter of determination and justification for project exemption. In summary, the appeal involves 3 points. First, the appellant believes that the project is an individually eligible historic resource based on its inclusion as a known resource in the Los Angeles citywide Korean American context statement. A property included as a known resource in the context statement is not a finding of historic eligibility. It must be fully evaluated under relevant criteria to determine if it meets significance and integrity thresholds. A historic resources assessment report of the property prepared by qualified architectural historians and validated by OHR staff found that it was not individually eligible. The appellant did not prepare an additional assessment or provide substantial evidence to dispute the findings. Second, the appellants claim that the project does not meet the Secretary of the Interior standards because it will demolish the interior of a historic resource. The adopted assessment found that the structure was not individually eligible as a historic resource and did not identify any interior character-defining features. The appellants also questioned staff's review of the exterior of the property only. The specific plan requires review of only exterior alterations, so review of interior alterations would have exceeded the planned scope. The alterations to the property's exterior were found to be in conformance with the Secretary of the Interior standards. The third key point of the appeal refers to cumulative impacts. The project will not result in cumulative impacts because it is found to be consistent with the Secretary's standards, and there are no other similar projects of the same type or located in the same place as the proposed project. In closing, I would like to reiterate that staff did not err in its application of a Class 31 categorical exemption because the property is not individually eligible as a historic resource. The project meets the Secretary of the Interior standards, and the project will not result in cumulative impacts. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any additional comments from staff? No? Okay. Great. Then we will start with the appellant. If staff could sit down for the moment, and we will bring forward the appellant. I believe is Laura Myers. I also have Jim Childs listed. Is either or both of you here? Ms. Myers, welcome. You'll have 5 minutes.
My name is Laura Myers. I am representing the North University Park Community Association. I am a qualified historian, just so you know. So part of the staff report indicated that there was not a difference of opinion among experts, but here I am. One of the points just made was that I did not prepare an additional assessment. That's swell. This has been on hold for 1 year. The planning staff never asked us to prepare an additional assessment. They put that statement in their staff report just a few weeks ago that doesn't appear to have any fairness to it, among other things. So, 3, they made the point just now that the resource must be evaluated by the relevant criteria. That's exactly our case. The resource was not evaluated by the criteria set forth in the Korean Americans in Los Angeles Survey LA context statement, which has been available for a couple years, nor by the multi-property submission to the National Register, which repeated the same criteria. So in other words, they have a different bar set forth in these 2 context statements than the normal bar. So let me try to explain that. It's very technical, and then I want to tell a story. Technically, the National Register has a very, very high bar for the evaluation of religious structures, churches. They're based on architecture. The context statement made the point that it's very rare in the Asian American community to have a purpose-built church. So we are looking at them as a part of history, not as a magnificent structure built by the Korean American Methodists. So why am I so upset about this? The report that was accepted by the Office of Historic Resources, among other things, said this was a nomadic church, and the church we're speaking of is the Korean Methodist Church. Of course it was nomadic. These were people whose homes were uprooted in Korea. The Japanese Imperial Army had invaded in 1905, declared Korea a part of Japan. A few people escaped. They came to America, came first to Hawaii, then California and the West Coast. They were considered by our government as Japanese, even though it was the Japanese who were discriminating against them. As a result of being Japanese, they were not eligible to be citizens. As a result of them not being citizens in California, they were not able to buy property. This church was nomadic until 1945 when it purchased this property, and then it owned it for another 15 years. The church itself, meaning the congregation, the Korean Methodist, has indeed moved on to other buildings. To this day, they are still a church that embraces recent immigrants, people who are first generation who do not speak English. Quite coincidentally, I ran into the members of the congregation very recently at the Angeles Rosedale Cemetery. They were on a little tour of their historic places, and at the cemetery is the grave of their founder, Florence Sherman, a missionary more than a century ago. They did not speak English. All their history was being told to them in Korean. So buildings tell a story. We talk in America now, at least in the historic preservation side of things, the power of place. Not the power of fancy architecture, the power of place. So in this case, the question before you, is it categorically exempt? All hinges on, is it a historic resource, and if so, what part? So the city is saying the outside, and I am saying, and others are saying, also the sanctuary and nave. Can a sanctuary and nave be demolished if it is a church that is relative to this church group, Korean Methodist, or for that matter, the original Baptist, Orchard Avenue Baptist Church congregation, the Swedish Lutheran congregation, later congregations? The church sanctuary and nave has been demolished. We contend that that does not meet the Secretary of Interior standards, and thus it's not eligible for a categorical exemption under Class 31. I have 17 seconds. So I'm very passionate about this. It just offends me that some people's histories are considered important and others are not, and that the evaluation did not take into account the poverty, the language barriers, and the economic barriers to ownership of this particular congregation back in, many years ago.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from the applicant. And I believe Damon Mamalakis, is that correct?
Honorable Council members, William Delvac on behalf of the property owner. This is in some ways a very simple matter. There are some facts that are not disputed, some facts that we see differently, and some facts we believe the appellant is wrong on. What we agree on is it's a historic building. The city said it's a historic building. Our consultants have said it's a historic building. And with someone with 35 years of experience in historic preservation law, the analysis would not be different in this case if it was individually eligible, if it was listed in the National Register, if it was a National Historic Landmark. The question is, do we meet the Secretary of Interior standards? That's an area in which we and the appellants do not agree. Let me just say a word about the standards. I started practicing 35 years ago representing developers using the Historic Rehabilitation Tax Credit. To get that tax credit, you must meet the standards. A monument, city-designated monument, in order to get an approval, you need to meet the standards. Under CEQA, the law I will immodestly say that I helped write, you get a categorical exemption if you meet the Secretary of Interior standards. Why? Because it's a regulatory incentive for doing the right thing. Today, this church, which was associated not just with the Koreans, but with a number of other ethnic groups, is there. It wasn't demolished. It was rehabilitated according to the standards. The fact that's in dispute, in which we believe that the appellant is wrong, is the interior was not demolished. It was built within. And at some point in the future, if someone wants to use it as a church or could use it as a church, and by the way, there's a reason why it's no longer a church. Unfortunately, there aren't congregations there to use it as a church. So instead, we're using it for badly needed housing. In the future, if someone wanted to return it to a church, it is entirely feasible to remove the interior improvements. The ceiling's still there, the material is still there. This project meets the Secretary of Interior standards. I urge you to consider that the appellants are bringing the city down a very dangerous road for preservation. If exemptions for meeting the standards are not allowed, the standard of review will be neg-decs or EIRs. You don't have to meet the Secretary of Interior standards if you're doing a mitigated neg-dec or if you're doing an EIR. In fact, as you all know, I represent developers tearing buildings down with EIRs. The building has been saved. They've met the standards. You should support the staff and deny the appeal, frankly, because it's beneficial and supportive of preservation. Would be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have, we'll move to public comment. The first comment will be from Gene Frost. And I believe you filed a community impact statement, so
Yes,
if
sir.
you speak on behalf of the neighborhood council, you'll have 3 minutes instead of the 1 minute.
Thank you. I'll try to make good use of the 3 minutes. I appreciate them. Today, I'm not just representing my own opinion, but that of the Empowerment Congress North Area Neighborhood Development Council. And our policy committee and our full board reviewed this project, and we support the appeal. We support housing. We support adaptive reuse. But in this instance, we believe the Secretary of Interior's standards have not been met for the reasons explained, that the interior space and the nave are not preserved. They may be returnable to its other condition early on, but the project as it presently is constituted does not meet the standards fully. The exterior does meet the Secretary of Interior standards. If mitigations are required, and we have a whole slew of mitigations that have been added to this project, then you cannot do a categorical exemption. In another case, the Roger Williams Baptist Church and Bishop Mansion, a CE was issued. It was also within the Design Review Board area, and the judge ruled you cannot have mitigations to allow for a categorical exemption, because if you've mitigated this, you've acknowledged that there are issues. And to do a class 32 categorical exemption, you must have certainty that there are no impacts. And if you have a list of mitigations, you have acknowledged that there are impacts that you have to mitigate. I wanted to make sure that you took a look at the letter by Amy Mentier from Chatton, Brown, Karstens, and Mentier. It goes into more of the legalese with regard to this. We're not asking for a great deal. We feel that the process here has been not what ought to happen when you have an Office of Historic Resources and when you have a planning tool that is research in a very underrepresented Korean American community. We think this has been mismanaged for over a year. We believe to some degree the developer has been disadvantaged because we've been waiting for a year to have our CEQA appeal heard, and in the meantime, Building and Safety has issued permits. Grant the appeal, do a negative deck, look into how the city is handing out categorical exemptions when there are issues that are relevant to a community. I've lived in this community for 40 years. It's very significant, very versatile, very diverse, and people in planning do not recognize its significance. So the Neighborhood Council is asking that you support this appeal and that we move on and get something that the legal system will support in terms of CEQA. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Next we have Ed Connery, followed by Catherine McKee. Okay, let the record reflect Mr. Connery is not here. Catherine McGee. Is Catherine McKee here? Going once. Oh, Ms. McKee, welcome.
Hello, I'm Catherine McGee. I'm the architectural historian who evaluated this property and project, and I just sort of wanted to reiterate what a great preservation project I think this is. The Secretary's standards do allow for adaptive reuse that changes aspects of interiors, especially when character-defining features are retained. So in looking at this project, I identify what are the physical features of both the exterior and interior, hypothetically, that would make it significant if it had been found individually eligible as a historical resource. And in this case, for a church of this type, the large open space and the high volume of the ceiling are really the primary character-defining features. There really isn't any other historic material that was present prior to the work having been implemented. And the work as implemented inserts 4 apartment units into the sanctuary interior in a way where you can still read the double height space of the former sanctuary in all of those units.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the public comment on this item. Sir, did you have your, I don't have a card for you, but did you want to speak on this item? Okay, there could be a malfunction, so go ahead, we'll figure it out. Go ahead and state your name and we'll give you a minute. Go ahead.
Jim Childs, I'm the applicant as well.
Oh,
I mean, the appellant as well?
we called you early with
Yes,
the...
but I filed a separate card so I could speak and allow my colleague her total
Okay,
5 minutes. So I'm just speaking separately.
Please restart his time to 1 minute.
Thank you.
You give him the full minute. You'll be speaking as, not as the applicant, because I already spoke,
No,
but
I was
as-
just identifying
as an
myself for you.
individual. Go ahead. Mr.
Yes,
Childs.
Jim Childs. I'm here today on behalf of Adams Dockweiler Heritage. I'm a preservation consultant and qualified to be one in spite of the planning department's opinion at the moment. This is about process. We had a problem in our community with a decision that was made by planning staff. We appealed to the South Area Planning Commission and found them to be equally as lacking in a correct decision. We then took our opportunity to file a sequel appeal to this body well over a year ago, and we waited and we waited and we waited. And while we waited for our turn to come before you, to make our case before you, which we were entitled to do, the appellant was allowed by Building and Safety and the Planning Department to ignore our appeal and go ahead and process his project so that he could make the timely USC schedule. Thank you.
Finish your sentence and go ahead. Okay. Okay. Colleagues, are there any comments or questions on this item? Seeing no comments or questions, I'm going to recommend that we deny the appeal and thereby sustain the Director of Planning's determination to certify the categorical exemption for the property located at 1276 West 29th Street, subject to the conditions of approval. Seeing no objection, that will be the order. And we will move on to item number 10.
Councilman, item 10 is an appeal that contains actually 3 appeals relative to a CEQA determination for a 4-unit residential building and the construction of a new 56-foot-high apartment building with 17 units.
Is your mic not working?
I'll try this again.
Okay.
And good afternoon, council members. I'm Jordan Turner with the Department of City Planning. The project before you today is a CEQA appeal of a determination made by the City Planning Commission in conjunction with the TOC appeal, the case number being DIR 2018-3411-TOC1A. The proposed project involves the demolition of an existing building and the construction of a 5-story residential building with 17 units. Of the 17 residential units, 2 will be reserved for extremely low-income households, and 1 unit will be reserved for very low-income households in Council District 11. 3 appeals were filed, and the 3 appeals are largely repetitive of the claims raised in the appeals that were filed with the City Planning Commission. 2 of the appeals notably have overlapping appeal points. Additionally, many of the submitted appeal points pertain to the approved entitlement, TOC, and not specifically to the merits of the environmental determination. In accordance with the LAMC, the TOC entitlements are not further appealable to City Council. The main appeal points raised were related to the following: the use of the Class 32 exemption, letter of determination errors, the CEQA zoning code process, lack of approval by the neighborhood council, building height and transitional height, neighborhood compatibility design guidelines, the TOC guidelines applicability, and traffic and unbundled parking. As detailed in the appeal response dated October 4th, 2019, the appellants have failed to adequately disclose how the city erred or abused its discretion. Additionally, no substantial evidence was presented showing that the City Planning Commission has erred in its actions relative to the categorical exemption. In conclusion, the Department of City Planning recommends that the Plum Committee deny the appeals and determine that based on the whole of the administrative record, the project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15332, and there is no substantial evidence demonstrating that an exception to the categorical exemption applies. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from the appellants. There are 3 appellants. You'll each can get up to 5 minutes, but since there are 3 appellants, we would hope that you would not take the full 15 minutes, but you have it if you want it. So, first one is Jordan Turner, or if you're all 3, you can choose your order. That's fine with me.
Okay, yeah. I think Yuta is going to go first, and then Scott, and then myself.
Could you say on the microphone? I can't hear you.
Utah Springer will go first, and then Scott Van Opdorp, and then I will speak last, and we won't go over the 15 minutes as a group.
Okay, that's fine. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Jutta Springer, and I am a stakeholder of the property adjacent to the proposed one.
Could you pull down the microphone because it's hard for us to hear? Just
Did you get the first part? Okay. Besides all the points of the appeal submitted, I want to request that the Plum Committee review its duty to investigate and call for an EIR regarding issues of noise and seismic vibration caused by the proposed building. Since the proposed building is unprecedented in scale and fails to meet even the minimum number of legally required rules regarding height, limits, and side yard setbacks, it is in violation of outdoor space requirements. On both sides of the building, people live and will be adversely affected by unprecedented noise and the loss of airspace, light, and circulation to which they are entitled. Furthermore, due to the reduction of side yard rules, the sound and seismic vibration caused by heavy equipment directly at the property line will need to be investigated to assure that they are not violating existing rules and cause damage to the buildings on either side. We are requesting an EIR report. Thank you.
So my name's Scott. Can we save that 3 minutes and 45 seconds, please? We need 15 minutes total.
I think we get 5 minutes for each one is what I've been told legally we're allowed. So go ahead.
So return the 5 minutes so I can have 5 minutes,
Yeah,
please.
Go ahead. Bring them to 5 minutes, please. Go
Okay.
ahead.
First of all, I'd like to say that I'm all for by right buildings in the city of LA. Born in the city of Los Angeles and having my child in the city of Los Angeles, this is one of the best places in the world to live. Second, I'd like to address and talk about CEQA appeals, or the lack thereof. It seems to be it's pay to play. So the city, you guys, have partnered up with developers to supersize TOC projects. And as the LA Times puts it, you guys have twisted the ordinance, of which you're being sued for right now. Supersizing this building is going to dig down 14 feet 7 inches, 0 inches from the property line, the whole property of the whole property. And by which doing, you'll be cutting into the support groups of a massive multi-ton cedar tree, 80 years old, of which has a social media following, disabling it and killing it over time. I have a Class 1 arborist who's done a 19-page report. Your partner, developer, has an 8-sentence report. And so I'm putting you on notice for the well-being of the neighborhood and the safety of the neighborhood. The city neighborhood council, 12-0 on this project, no. And at that, the developer, said he has no accountability, no responsibility after he cuts the roots. And let me reiterate, I'm putting you guys on notice. Notice and vibration, 0 inches from the property line with heavy equipment needs an environmental impact report. Letting this happen becomes gross negligence. I've worked in the city of Santa Monica, Beverly Hills. I've also worked in Culver City and the city of Torrance, and the city of LA as a project supervisor. We all need an environmental report, all of us. CEQA at a state level, anything else is shameful.
And all of this was actually in response to Jordan. This all was brought up at the City Planning Commission, the unelected body. This all was brought up, the tree, the vibration, all of it. So that's just part of the whole gaslighting of the situation. So what I want to say is that my son is a 5th generation. My family's been here in Los Angeles for over 100 years. And the Class 32 exemption, what I'm here to do today is for you to vacate the Class 32 exemption because clearly it doesn't apply. We did mention it in person, in writing. I went to your doors. The gaslighting that it has not been mentioned and that Jordan himself and emails to all of you is stunning, but it's consistent. So speaking of the vibration at the property line, I asked in writing at the CPC meeting, why is it not put into the letter of determination? Why is the foundation of the project not included in the letter of determination? Oh, it's above ground. It's identified as pedestal, subterranean. Never accurate because why? I don't know. Well, we're just going to gaslight that like we've gaslighted the whole TOC projects. You literally are being sued by Fix the City. There's an injunction of relief about your actions regarding the CEQA portion, the process that I have been subject to. You're literally being sued, but you're just going to gaslight it and say, oh, the phone call, I'm just all about a corruption. I don't want that. It's total gaslighting. Again, with the outdoor spaces, it's not sufficient. They're supposed to be spread around. The balcony is included in the math. I mentioned it at CPC. I mentioned it to Jordan. It isn't. It's not okay. And yet, you're just going to gaslight and say, well, balconies, we can include that because why? Why can you gaslight like that? And like Chris Matthews says, it's ethical incontinence, right? It goes on for so long that you're not even realizing you're doing it at every moment, at every opportunity. Due process was just with rigor avoided. And to come here and say that we didn't mention any of these items at the CPA, it's a matter of public record. It's a matter of public record. And it's just another in a long series of ways to literally take the sales out. And if you actually attended your neighborhood council meetings, they're sending the developers out, and it's like sending out Stephen Miller, DeVos, and Mnuchin to sell this TOC thing. I'm just saying, you're not doing yourselves any favor by sending developers out and gaslighting the neighbors. We all know what's going on. It's $6,000 for a note of exemption. You can have it for these TOC projects. They were written in 90 days. We get it. It wasn't enough long time. We get it. We get it. But just when you're faced with an error, don't try to tweet your way out of it. Don't try that. It's not working. I'm at the neighborhood council. So I'm not worried about that awkward moment when I run into you guys because you guys don't show up. But it's just the gaslighting of the TOC projects. You're literally being sued by the process. And to say that we're here and we don't know what we're talking about and we're NIMBYs or we're hippies and rich hippies. My family's been here for 100, they're buried in Hollywood forever, next to Bugsy Siegel, a nice guy. You know what I'm saying? I'm not here because I'm trying to stop the process. By right building, he had it in there for 5 months. And then you guys said, TOC, make it big, make it broader, make it tall. You have these guidelines that we didn't really approve and that we're currently being sued for. So, I got a minute 43. I just want to also, the notice of exemption, he's kind of been gaslighted too, right? Because he had a by right bidding. He would literally be done right now and collecting rent. But you kind of wag the TOC, and now 2 years later, this guy has been gaslighted too. And there's a reason why after 19 months, the plans that you're saying are okay, that are valid in the NOA because they've been approved, that gaslight to that poor developer guy, don't make me side with him. He's fallen for it too. And these meetings are really, so class 32 exemption, vacated, just get a report. It's like, just release your tax returns. What do you have to hide? Just stop gaslighting it. Just get a report. One more minute. I got another minute. Oh.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm exhausted, but I just like...
You don't have to use every second.
Yeah, I know, but I feel like because I get so little FaceTime when I show up at your offices or when I email you or when I call your offices, I feel like I just really want to make it clear that it's not pretty out there at the neighborhood council meetings. I am actually the good cop. Can you imagine that? I'm like the lady who's not super mad. And all politics is local and at the property line with strangers overlooking your home. It doesn't get any more local than that. Approving big toxic towers without CEQA appeals, it doesn't get more local than that. That's politics on our property lines. And we've noticed and we've read the articles and, tweet your approval, I guess.
Thank you very much. Next, we will hear from the applicant.
Hi. My name is Yasin Al-Khalisi. I am the owner of the building on the south side of the project 2465.
I'm sorry. Are you the applicant?
Pardon me?
Are you the applicant?
I am a yeah. Yeah.
The applicant. What is your name? Okay, sir, your name is Michael Gotzi. Is that we'll call you up when I have your name as a public comment. We'll call you up, but we have a process on all of these cases. We hear the appellant, and then we hear the applicant, and then we hear public comment. So you'll have your chance, but now we hear from the applicant.
Good afternoon, City Council members and Planning and Land Use Management Committee members. My name is Michael Gotzi. I'm a licensed structural engineer, and for the past 30 years, I've been involved in design and construction of hundreds of projects, structural projects in the city of Los Angeles. I'm not a big developer. We're a mom and pop developer, just my wife and I. So what I've been going through for the past 2 years has been unbelievable. I'm the owner and developer of this 17-unit apartment building, which includes 3 affordable housing units. And I've been working on this project for the past 2 years. We submitted this project to the planning department in February of 2018, over a year and 8 months ago. And we still don't have clearance from the planning department so that I can build this project. It's amazing. And it's all by all these appeals by the neighbors. And I've submitted this project. I volunteered to submit this project to the neighborhood council. I went there several times, tried to reason with everybody that this project is by the book and nothing unusual about it, but they fought me every step of the way. And this project was approved by the planning department in December of 2018. And they kept appealing and appealing, and now it's been delayed by 10 months. And I'm about to lose the construction loan on this project and go bankrupt on it. It's unbelievable. Anyway, I don't want to say too much, but I have reviewed the findings of the planning department and the planning department commissioners, and I'm in agreement with their findings. I'm here to support this project. This apartment building is an urban infill project located close to the business and employment centers along Pico Boulevard and Olympic Boulevard, and within walking distance of the Exposition Sepulveda Metro Rail Station and major bus stops. The project is in compliance with the general intent of the Palms Mar Vista Del Rey Community Plan to build higher density multifamily residential buildings near places of high employment and near places of mass transportation hubs, such as the metro rail stations and bus stops, in order to reduce car traffic. This project is in conformance with the City of LA Transit-Oriented Communities Guidelines. This project provides 3 affordable housing units for the City of Los Angeles in West LA and provides an opportunity for 3 very low-income families to live near places of high employment. Other multifamily residential projects located in the immediate vicinity of this project have been approved by the City of LA and are currently under construction, such as the multifamily residential project at 2499 South Corinth Avenue, just 1 block from this project. It is so clear that there are no CEQA approval violations by the City of LA approving this urban infill project. This has been an unjust attempt by the neighbors to delay the construction of this project from the beginning. I should be in the middle of construction in this project. I have to mention it again. This construction of this project has been delayed so much at tremendous cost and painful agony to the developer. As I mentioned, it's been delayed for 10 months, and carrying cost of a property in West LA is very expensive. And the appellants, Catherine Shore and Scott Van Optrop, are husband and wife owners and occupants of a 4-unit apartment building at 2461 Perdue, just north of my property. Just going back, I met them a year ago in February of 2018 because there's an electrical line that's crossing my property diagonally to feed their property, and I called DWP to come and remove it, and because of that, we met them. And from the beginning, Catherine said she has lived in that building for many years, she's used to it, and she doesn't want to see any changes in that neighborhood. And so that's how the whole thing started. I met with them at the DWP personnel in March of 2018, and we came up, DWP suggested a solution for me to install an upgraded electrical panel for them so they can come in and reroute that wire within their own property. I did that at a cost of $10,000 with permits and everything. And when DWP personnel went there February of this year, to do their work, they refused service and didn't let them do their work. So that wire is still hanging there. They came to every neighborhood council meeting and opposed this project. I volunteered to show this project to the West LA Neighborhood Council, and they didn't approve it because they were trying to basically force me to add one more affordable housing unit to the project. And I told them that economically it's not possible. It doesn't pencil out. I cannot do it. We're almost 18% affordable housing right now. And they had no problem with the height or the size of the project. They just wanted to push that issue. And I said, I cannot do it. And that's the reason they didn't vote for the project. The planning department commissioners heard the appeals in April, and they rejected the appeals and they approved the project. The neighbors went immediately and appealed to the city council for CEQA, and that delayed the project more. It's been 10 months of delay due to the neighbors' appeal, and I hope what I like to say, the delays in start of construction caused by meritless appeals by neighbors have inflicted thousands of dollars of extra expense to the developer, who is responsible to pay for these additional expenses to a small developer like me. It is this easy appeal process that allows a neighbor who doesn't want anything to be built next to them to keep appealing to the city and cause major delays and tremendous financial costs to the developer. I hope the city streamlines the appeal process so that baseless appeals are detected early on and rejected, so it doesn't cause so much delay and financial burden to the developer. Regarding what the appellants talked about today, Jet Springer mentioned a few things about noise and all that. I will make sure that during construction, I do my best to keep the noise and the dust and everything down so that it doesn't make any problems for any of the adjacent buildings. I'm a professional person and I know how to take care of things professionally. Scott Van Otrop talked about that tree, that 80-year-old pine tree. I hired an arborist who came and inspected the tree. The tree is 7 feet away from the property line, and where supposedly, if there are any roots of it, there is a concrete pavement. I've been there for years and years. So the arborist said that none of the major roots of the pine tree are going to grow under a concrete pavement. So excavating that area is not going to do anything to that tree, and that was the conclusion of the arborist. And Catherine Shore, I wasn't sure she was talking something about foundation and all that, but I didn't understand it. So that's basically all I have to say. I'm in support of this project.
Thank you very much. Next, we have public comment. My machine just went down here. Give me a second. This thing is on the blank, but I know we had one speaker. Go, state your name, please, because I don't have the machine.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. I don't feel well today, but I had to come to make my voice heard. I do not understand why the city of Los Angeles would give a permit for a 5-story monster building in very small neighborhood, which consists basically of single home on the highest 3-story buildings. This building, with the benefit is gating, reducing the space between the building in front on the block to the half of what regulation usually, for simply giving What is this?
Your time is up. You may finish your sentence, but the time is
Could you
up.
give me another minute?
I can't do that, not legally. You can finish your sentence.
Give me another minute, please.
I can't legally do that. Otherwise, I'd
not?
have to reopen it up for everybody to speak an additional minute. It's the rules. I can't argue with about it either. It's the rules.
Let
of
me
this
make this
institution.
statement. The
Finish your sentence.
The city of Los Angeles cannot void its legal responsibility by giving a permit to such a monster in the middle of us and making suffer our business, our life, quality of our life, the rest
Thank you.
of our...
Thank you. Your time has expired. Thank you. You're welcome. Staff, if you could respond to some of the arguments that you've heard briefly.
Gladly. Once again, Jordan Turner, Department of City Planning. Regarding the noise, we do have a noise ordinance that the applicant will be bound by, and it has many qualifications regarding when construction can happen, the type of construction that can happen, so there's no impact to the adjacent neighbors. Regarding the height and the scale of the building, as I mentioned before, it is a TOC project, and so with our program, if there are units that are set aside, the applicants are granted base incentive and additional incentives. In this case, an additional incentive of 56 feet, so an 11-foot increase in height from its base of 45 feet. So it is a little taller than what's in the neighborhood, but it went through our TOC process and also was found to be appropriate by our City Planning Commission. The applicant did mention trees, and there is a tree report on file for the committee to review. Regarding construction impacts, other construction impacts, because there is subterranean parking, there will be underground construction and construction basically from property line to property line for the parking, but also that also be bound by different city ordinances regarding construction. So as we mentioned, we feel that the project does qualify for a Class 32 exemption given the size and scales and analysis given for the project.
Are there any comments or questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, the action will be to deny the appeal that was filed and thereby sustain the Director of Planning's determination in approving the categorical exemption for the project located at 2465 through 2467 South Purdue Avenue. That'll be the order, and we will move to item number 11.
Item 11, Councilman, this is a city attorney prepare ordinance that brings into consistency the Central City West specific plans with affordable housing requirements.
Good afternoon, committee members. Craig Weber, City Planning staff. We are happy to see the ordinance to amend the Central City West specific plan before the committee for its final adoption, having completed the city attorney's form and legality process. I've simply been asked to comment that the committee would be acting on a negative declaration dated November 18, but uploaded to the council file October 4th, 2019. It came to our attention late last week that an incorrect copy of that negative declaration had been uploaded. So we wanted to make sure that the neg deck that the Planning Commission had considered and that has been in the public record all this time, but had not been uploaded to the council file, was noted as the correct negative declaration. That concludes our comments.
Thank you. Just stand by potentially. We have two public comment cards on this. Michael Shilstone, followed by Ryan Lederman.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Shilstone with the Central City Association, an organization dedicated to enhancing the vibrancy of greater downtown LA and investment in its growth. We'd like to thank Councilmember Cedillo for addressing the inconsistencies between the Central City West specific plan's affordable housing provisions and citywide and state policies. We're supportive of the amendments, and we appreciate the thoughtful, phased approach that will provide certainty for projects already filed and for those to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Lederman.
Good afternoon, Ryan Lederman. Thank you to Councilman Cedillo, as well as to Councilman Dawson for shepherding this ordinance through. Housing is very critical to the city of Los Angeles, and this ordinance is critical to helping stop planning by surprise. And so we just look forward to the enactment of this ordinance, and the CCW SP does have a lot of antiquated provisions in it. This is a step in the right direction, and we look forward to, hopefully in the future, other corrections of antiquated provisions in that ordinance. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Colleagues, any comments or questions on this item? Mr. Cedillo.
I want to thank the staff and everybody who's worked on this. I think this sets a template, not only just for my district, but for the entirety of the city. And I look forward to going forward both with this and then amplifying this experience for the rest of the city.
Great. We look forward to the amplification as well. So without objection, we will adopt the city attorney prepared ordinance. We'll move to item 12, which is our last item.
Item 12, Councilman, this is a motion, Blumenfield Smith. It's instructing Building and Safety, along with the city attorney, to prepare an ordinance that amends the municipal code to allow low-voltage electric security fences in the city.
Okay, we have any staff report on this? No. Public comment cards on this item? No? Okay. So I'm going to recommend that we, there's no public, that we, well, I'll ask if there's any questions, but I'm going to recommend that we request that they come back with a report before actually drafting the ordinance so that we have a report back on this. Also wanted to make a couple of modifications, which I wanted to put out there before opening it up to any comments. Some of those modifications include, or they are specifically, in addition to making it a report instead of drafting the ordinance, that we limit the use of the electrified security fences to manufacturing zones only. B, that the electrified fences may not be located within 500 feet of an R zone. C, that we include landscaping and other aesthetic criteria for proposed electrified fences with a street frontage greater than 50 linear feet. And D, that we prohibit the use of razor wire and or barbed wire on properties that elect to utilize electrified fences in accordance with this proposed ordinance. So those are the 5 recommended changes. Are there any comments or questions on this item, colleagues? Seeing none, that will be the order. And I believe that concludes, Mr. Mejia. Is there anything else on our docket?
No, Councilman, that concludes the agenda.
Okay, this meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you.